ننتظر دقيقة حتى يتم إنه يبث عبر الأونلاين إن شاء الله. طيب we're ready إن شاء الله. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين. أما بعد، في البداية نهنئكم جميعا بقدوم شهر رمضان المبارك. الحمد لله الذي أحيانا إلى هذا اليوم حتى نصوم هذا اليوم، هذه نعمة عظيمة. ونرحب بكل من الأخ الأستاذ داوود وليد. الأستاذ داوود وليد هو المدير التنفيذي لمنظمة كير. منظمة كير هي منظمة حقوقية تدافع عن حقوق المسلمين في أمريكا. So I would like to welcome brother Dawud Walid. Dawud Walid is the executive director for CAIR Michigan in Michigan. And CAIR, as you all know, it defends the Muslims' right, try to protect the Muslims across the U.S. Also, I would like to welcome Sister Amy Doukoure. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. It's not easy for me. But from now on, so on, I will say Sister Amy, okay? So I would like to welcome Sister Amy. Sister Amy is an attorney. She is a lawyer with CAIR. She's been there for alhamdulillah several years, and she's been doing a great job. الأخت إيمي هي محامية في منظمة كير التي يعني عندما تقع قضية تدافع عنها. The last case that alhamdulillah CAIR, we won a case to build the first masjid in Troy. في مدينة تروي كانت المدينة تمنع إقامة مسجد هناك بحجج يعني واهية، بالرغم أنه هناك 35 يعني كنيسة. الحمد لله منظمة كير يعني اشتغلوا شغل يعني ممتاز، وتم انتزاع قرار قضائي بالسماح لهذا المسجد بالبناء، وهذا يكون أول مسجد في مدينة تروي. فهذه من إحدى الفوائد لهذه المنظمة. Right, brother Dawud? Inshallah, first mosque in Troy, inshallah, will be built. So today our lecture is about know your rights. Inshallah I will translate. أنا بترجم. أنا متأكد أنكم تفهمون الإنجليزي، بس هناك أخوة عادهم جاءوا من اليمن، فإن شاء الله أنا أترجم يعني بقدر الإمكان. فسنبدأ بالأخ داوود ثم الأخت إيمي، وإن شاء الله سوف أقوم بالترجمة. Go ahead, brother.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Beloved brothers, it's been about 10 years now since CAIR Michigan has been coming in Shahr Ramadan to give you these presentations in regards to knowing your rights. And before I pass the microphone over to Sister Amy, I strongly suggest that the information that you learn here today, you take it home to your wives and your family, and to also share the YouTube link that is sharing right now, that you share it in your WhatsApp groups and on Facebook, so that people in the Muslim community, especially Yemeni people in particular, are able to get this information.
الأخ وليد يقول إنه هذه السنة العاشرة من المحاضرات، وقبل أن يوجه الميكروفون للأخت إيمي يقول إنه أي معلومات تتعلموها اليوم خذوها يعني خذوها لبيتكم، يعني شاركوا المعلومات هذه مع أهلكم، مع زوجاتكم، مع أبنائكم، لأنه كما العدد موجود هنا، لكنه تنقلوها للآخرين. كذلك وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي، وإحنا نبث هذه عبر وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي إن شاء الله، وتكون مسجلة إذا أحد منكم يريد أن يشارك. Go ahead, sister.
I'll just make two other points before passing. Two other points before passing the microphone to Sister Amy, who will give the majority of today's presentation, though I will be here at the question-answer sessions. I will also answer any questions if need be. Sister Amy is most qualified. The first of those things to remind you is that, alhamdulillah, in America we live in a system of the rule of law, right? We're not in Syria or other places where there is no rights, there is no rule of law. alhamdulillah, for this ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us of living here, despite the problems that we have. But the first point to make is that in America, if you do not exercise or invoke your rights can be taken away from you, or you will have your rights violated. This is the first thing. So it should never be our position that we sit back and take abuse, or in order to try to act like we're being good Americans, that we forfeit our rights. That's not what it means to be a good American citizen.
الأخ داود إن شاء الله هو يعني مقدم وسوف يساعد في الإجابة على الأسئلة في الأخير. سوف تكون هناك أسئلة وأجوبة. معظم المحاضرة ستكون للأخت أيمي، لكنه سيكون موجود لإجابة أي أسئلة. وكذلك هو يقول أن أمريكا هي دولة النظام والقانون. هنا دولة النظام والقانون، وإذا أنت لم يعني تنتزع حقوقك ولم تحافظ على حقوقك فستنتزع منك. احنا لسنا في دول مثل سوريا او غيرها لا يوجد لا حقوق ولا واجبات. في امريكا لك الحق، لك حقوق ولك واجبات، فاعرف حقوقك حتى تستطيع انك يعني تاخذ حقوقك بنفسك.
Then the second piece of advice, and I know that Sister Amy will touch on some things specific to Yemeni people, but I must say this because this is a issue specific for Yemeni people and Somali people in particular, that I know within the Yemeni and Somali cultures that people in our area in Michigan chew khat, even though it's illegal, right? If you get caught with khat and you're not an American citizen, you're here on a H-1 visa or whatever type of visa that you're here on, you get caught with khat in your car or driving, whatever the circumstance, khat is scheduled in America as a narcotic. And you could be risking having your visa revoked and being deported back to Yemen or to Somal or wherever you're from. So the American government doesn't care about the ikhtilaf al-fuqaha of whether it's mubah or makruh or whatever. They don't care about that. You can't make that argument in immigration court. Right? So I just have to say that because I know you. I'm from you. I'm from the community, and I know of this particular issue. So I just had to say that.
القضية الأولى الثانية وهي قضية القات، وهي منتشرة بين الجاليتين اليمنية والصومالية كما تعرفون. نقطة مهمة جدا إنه أي واحد أتى زائر يعني مش جنسية ولا جرين كارد. He's a visitor، يعني جاء زائر يعني زيارة دراسة هذا، وقبض عليه وهو يعني معه القات أو مخزن أو في السيارة، فسوف يتم تسفيره. فهذه نقطة أنا متأكد معظمكم هنا يعني إما جنسية أو هذا، لكن انقلها للآخر لأننا نشوف بعض الناس يعني يخالفون. والأخ داود يقول أنه يعني مننا you're one of us. Have you chewed cat? No. Okay. No, I was joking. Okay.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Amy Doukoure. I'm the staff attorney at CAIR Michigan. And before I start, I just have to say that the information that we're providing today is for informational purposes only. It's not considered to be legal advice, and it does not create an attorney-client relationship between anybody. And I also encourage you that if you have specific questions, hold your questions till the end, because Brother Dawud and I will be taking questions, inshallah.
كل المعلومات التي هي اليوم ستعطى هي عبارة عن information، يعني عبارة عن معلومات عامة لكم جميعا، وليست يعني legal advice أو استشارة قانونية خاصة. يعني إذا واحد عنده سؤال أو أي شيء ممكن يخليها للأخير إن شاء الله ويسأل فيها.
So today I'm going to talk to you about what your rights are when you're traveling internationally. So as you're coming and going from the United States at the United States border. One thing that we know is that Muslims are 10 times as likely to be stopped at the U.S. border upon re-entry than any other religious group or ethnic group in the world. We are stopped more frequently and we are asked more intrusive questioning than any other group that travels into the U.S. borders. And this poses a problem for us. It poses a problem for us because we are being questioned about things that are not appropriate, in an attempt to basically just map our community and see how we're all interconnected, both inside the United States and outside of the United States. So I'm going to talk to you today about the best ways to protect your information and what you can and cannot do at the border.
معظمنا كمسلمين نسافر يعني خارج أمريكا إلى داخل أمريكا، ونحن نتعرض للمساءلة أكثر من أي جالية أخرى 10 مرات يعني يمكن يأخذوا من مسلم يعني نسبة أنه 10 مرات أكثر من يأخذوا نسبة غير المسلم. فالأخت إيمي إن شاء الله سوف تتحدث يعني إيش أنت تقدر تقول وإيش ما تقدر، يعني لك الحق أنك لا تقول، يعني إيش حقوقك وإيش واجباتك، يعني إيش أنت اللي ملزم تقوله في التحقيق وإيش اللي أنت مش ملزم تقوله في التحقيق.
When you're entering the United States from an overseas travel, if you're at the border, there are very limited rights that you have. We enjoy a lot of protections in the United States, a right to privacy, a right to remain silent. Some of those rights do not exist for us at the border. And some of those rights only exist for us at the border if you're a U.S. citizen. So when I'm talking today about what can happen at the border, I'm going to be talking about two different groups of people. I'm going to be talking about what you can do as a U.S. citizen and what you can do as a visa holder. And when I say visa holder, I'm also meaning lawful permanent resident. A lawful permanent resident is a type of visa that you hold. It is higher than, and it has more rights than, say, a J1 visa if you're here as a student, or a B1 visitor visa, or even an H1B visa. But really, there are two classifications for rights at the border. You're either a U.S. citizen or you're not.
في البداية سأتكلم عن حقوقك في الحدود. يعني في الحدود إيش معنى؟ لما تدخل في المطارات، لما أجي من كندا، الحقوق لنا في هذه المطارات وفي الحدود هي أقل من حقوقنا وإحنا داخل أمريكا. يعني عندما تكون في الحدود ويسألوك أسئلة في أشياء لازم تجيب عليها، يعني فهي ستتكلم عن ذلك. وفي نوعين، يعني إما أن تكون US citizen لك حقوق أكثر، أو تكون يعني معك فيزا. الفيزا يعني حامل فيزا، إما إقامة يعني جرين كارد اللي هي البطاقة الخضراء كما تعلمون، الالين كارد، أو تكون زائر مثل students، واحد جاء زيارة بزنس، جاء زيارة عمل. كل واحد له يعني حقوق. اليو سيتيزن طبعا حقوقه يعني وضعه أفضل، فستتكلم عن حقوق المجموعات هذه إن شاء الله في الدقائق القادمة.
So whenever anybody enters the border from being overseas into the United States, everybody has to go through what is considered to be primary screening. That's where you show up at the border, they ask you questions, you show your passport, they ask you, to identify yourself, they ask you basic questions about where you've been, what countries you've been to, and whether you're bringing anything back that you shouldn't, like fruits and vegetables, meats, or anything like that. If those are all very normal questions, and everybody has to do that. When they take you away from that position, or they start to ask you more in-depth questions, that's what's called secondary screening. Secondary screening is more intrusive screening, and it's more lengthy in time. And so what we're talking about is, when we move forward, we're going to be talking about what happens in secondary screening, what you can and cannot do, because everybody has to answer questions at the border. Everybody has to identify themselves. Everybody has to talk about where they've been, and that means every single country that you've been through. Even if you're traveling on a passport that is not a U.S. passport, some of us have dual citizenship, and we might travel on our non-U.S. passport from Yemen or other places to different countries. You literally have to tell them every single place that you've been, even if you just transitioned through that country. And you have to identify yourself, and you have to list all of the things that you might be bringing back with you that might be problematic, fruits, vegetables, and things that may be prohibited.
هي ستتكلم عن عندما تدخل في المطار أو في الحدود. أول ما تصل طبعا كلنا قد مرينا بهذه المرحلة، يعملوا معك المقابلة الأولية. المقابلة الأولية أو الأسئلة الأولية هي عند يعني الكاونتر، وهي يعني من أين جئت، يأخذوا منك الجواز، يسألوك عن أسئلة يعني إيش حضرت معك، إيش الدول اللي زرتها في خلال رحلتك. هذه الأمور الأساسية، هذه لابد الجميع يجاوب عليها، لابد يعني ما حد يستطيع يقول يعني ما جاوب عليها. هي لن تركز على هذا لأنه هذا لازم نجيب، لكن في هناك يعملوا مقابلة ثانوية. مقابلة ثانوية بمعنى يأخذوك ويحطوك في غرفة أو في مكان معين ويبدأوا يسألوك أسئلة يعني قد تكون غير مناسبة. فهي لن تتحدث عن الأولى، لأن الأولى لازم الجميع يجاوب عليها، اللي هي إيش، جبت أكل، جبت طعام، جبت فروت، جبت حاجات. هي ستتكلم عن المقابلة الثانية اللي فيها أسئلة يعني لا يجب لهم أن يسألوا، أو لا يجب عليك أن تجاوب على هذه الأسئلة.
Once you went through primary screening, if they pull you to the side or they start to question you more in depth, then you're considered to be in secondary screening. In secondary screening, we know Muslims are 10 times as likely to be taken for secondary screening than anybody else. And that's usually when they'll have one or two plainclothes officers. They don't identify themselves. They don't wear uniforms most of the time. And sometimes, frequently, they're not even Customs Protection Agency. They're with other agencies. They pull you to the side and they start asking, and sometimes they take you in a room and they start asking you other types of questions. Some types of questions that they like to ask very recently, some of the things that we're hearing from the border, is that they're asking about people's family members that live overseas or family members that live here. They're asking about what people's family members' jobs are or what they're studying in school. They might ask you how you feel about certain politics that are happening overseas or certain politics inside the United States that affect overseas. So all of these types of questions are questions that we're hearing very frequently at the border right now when we have people coming to us who've had a problem traveling. And I can tell you every single one of those questions is an inappropriate question and is not a question that you should ever be asked at the border. You should never be asked what your family members do, especially if they're not traveling with you. You should not be asked where your family members live overseas. They should not be asking you about your uncle by name that has never been to the United States, which is something that we hear. All of those questions are inappropriate. But really, how do we respond to those questions? Well, if you're a U.S. citizen, you can flat out refuse to answer those questions, and you absolutely should. You should exercise your right to remain silent. And you can do so very affirmatively, but also respectfully by saying, respectfully, I'm declining to answer those questions because they're not appropriate and they're not relevant to why I'm at the border today. However, if you're a lawful permanent resident, you can give a little pushback and you can say, I don't want to answer those questions, they're not appropriate, and it's likely you won't have any issues. When you get into problems where we see this change is when we have a visa holder. So if you're here on a visitor visa or trying to enter on a K-1 visa or any other type of visa other than a lawful permanent resident, and you refuse to answer these questions, it's very likely that you're going to be turned around at the border and sent back to whatever country you've just came from.
Okay, so إذا مريت من البرايمري انترفيو اللي هي المقابلة الأولية وحطوك في مقابلة أخرى، غالباً يأتوا ناس مش ليسوا من ضباط الجمارك يعني، وإنما من ايجنسي آخرين يعني من فئة من الحكومة الآخرين يعني قد يكون الFBI يعني، ويبدأوا يسألوك أسئلة يعني مثلاً عن عائلتك، من معك من عائلة، من هم عائلتك في اليمن يعني، اذكر لنا أسماء العائلة في اليمن، ايش يشتغلوا، ايش يعملوا، ايش اسماء عائلتك داخل امريكا، ايش يعملوا، ايش يشتغلوا. يسالوك عن السياسه، ايش رايك في جماعه كذا، ايش رايك في جماعه هكذا، ايش رايك في يعني في قضايا السياسه سواء كانت داخليه او يعني خارجيه. يسالوك عن السياسه الداخليه في امريكا او الداخليه، او يسالوك عن شغل اسرتك يعني ايش يعملوا اسرتك. هذه الاسئله كلها يعني غير مقبوله يعني، المفروض ما يسالوا هذه الاسئله وانت لست ملزم انك تجاوب عليها. فإذا عرفت أنه أنت لست ملزم، بس كيف الطريقة، كيف تقول لهم يعني، يقول لهم بطريقة مؤدبة يعني، إذا أنت US citizen، إذا أنت جنسية أمريكية، تقول لهم يعني أنا لست ملزما أنه أجاوب على الأسئلة، أنا يعني سوف أكون صامت يعني، تكون صامت يعني I don't have to answer this question, I decline to answer these questions. لست ملزما أن أنا أجاوب على هذه الأسئلة. هذا إذا أنت US citizen، ولن تكون عندك أي مشكلة لأنه أنت US citizen لن يلزمك أنك تجاوب على الأسئلة. إذا عندك جرين كارد سوف يحاولوا يضغطوا عليك أكثر بحكم أنك جرين كارد، بس يحق لك أنك لا تجيب على أي من الأسئلة هذه بنفس الطريقة المؤدبة، أنه يعني أنا سأظل صامت ولست ملزما أن أجاوب على هذه الأسئلة. لا تتعلق هذه الأسئلة برحلتي التي كنت عليها. يعني إذا عندك يسألوك مثلا أبوك أين يسكن أبوك، هل أبوك في أمريكا، هل أبوك في اليمن، هل جدك في، ما لست ملزما على أن تجيب على أي هذه من الأسئلة بطريقة. المشكلة إذا أنت جيت زيارة مثلا طالب أو بزنس أو جيت زيارة، يعني هذا أنت ملزم تجاوب عليه. إذا لم تجاوب عليها يحق لك، بس يمكن يرجعوك، يعني احتمال يرجعوك باك يعني إلى بلدك. هذا باختصار.
And it's very important that if you have the opportunity to refuse to answer these questions, you should refuse to answer these questions. We have the right to remain silent as U.S. citizens, and we should exercise that right. U.S. citizens cannot be denied entry at the border. Customs and Border Protection has two options: let you in the country or arrest you. And since we know we've done nothing wrong, we know they have no reason to arrest us. So we should decline to answer the questions, and we should assume that they're going to let us in. The other thing is, if you're a U.S. citizen and they're holding you for lengthy periods of time when you're at the border, that actually might be illegal. You have the right to counsel when you're in custody. And when you're at the border for inspection, there's no right to an attorney. But when they've held you for 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours or longer, then it becomes an in-custody situation. And you, as a U.S. citizen, you do in fact have a right to counsel at that point in time. U.S. citizens are the only people who have the right to ask for counsel at the border. Lawful permanent residents cannot, and neither can visa holders.
فالجنسية الذي عنده جنسية له حقوق كثيرة، فلا يحق لهم أنهم يرجعوه إلى بلده الذي جاء منه لأنه أمريكي يعني، ولا يحق لهم أنهم يعتقلوه لأنه يعني ليش يعتقلوه ما عنده أي جريمة يعني. فهم يعني إذا التزمت الصمت ولم تجب عليهم في الأخير، يعني اللي يقدروا يعملوا أنهم يخلوك في المطار ساعتين 3. في هذه الحالة لك الحق أنه تطلب محامي، لأنه يعني ما يحق لهم أنهم يحطوك في المطار يعني للنهاية. فالذي جنسية أمريكية له حقوق أكثر يعني في قضية في البوردر، يعني هو الوحيد الذي يقدر يطلب محامي بعد إيقافه أقل من ساعتين أو أكثر.
The other thing is if you're being asked questions about your religion, your social media usages, or your social media profiles, whether it's your Facebook page, your Instagram page, Snapchat, whatever else the youth is using these days, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a lot of more apps. But you, as a lawful permanent resident and a U.S. citizen, you do not have to disclose that information. As a visa holder, you do, but you do not have to give out your passwords. But you do have to disclose what your social media accounts are if you are a visa holder, but not if you're a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident.
يعني قد يسألوك أسئلة عن دينك، يعني ما هو دينك، أو يسألوك أسئلة عن السوشيال ميديا، يعني عن يعني روينا حقك الواتساب، روينا حقك الفيسبوك، روينا حقك يعني الانستغرام إلى آخره يعني. فأنت كجنسية أمريكية كأمريكي أو حتى جرين كارت لست ملزما إنك تعطيهم، يعني تقول لهم يعني أو not give you، ما تعطيهم يعني، أنت لك الحق. إذا أنت فيزا هولدر زائر أو يعني طبعا معروف يعني إذا ما تعطيهم فقد يرجعوك يعني. حتى الفيزا هولدر ما يعني لها الحق إنه ما يعطيهمش الباسورد، يعني أنت إذا طلبوا منك الباسورد لا تعطيهم الباسورد، لا يحق لهم إنهم يأخذوا منك الباسورد لأي من حقك الحسابات في الفيسبوك وإلى آخره.
The other thing that we're seeing a lot of at the border, and it's been probably this is the 3rd year in a row where we've seen an increase of this at the border, is people having their electronic devices seized, including their cell phone, their laptops, zip drives. This year we've had somebody have 4 electronic devices seized at the border from one border crossing. So it becomes very important that you know and understand your rights as it pertains to electronic devices at the border. And if you are a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident and you enter the United States with your cell phone, and I know everybody, like I carry my cell phone, it has all of my information from my entire life on it, let's be frank. If somebody got a hold of my cell phone, they could find out a lot of information about me, about who I'm talking to, about how frequently I'm talking to that, and about what kinds of activities that I'm engaging in. So when we're crossing the border with that type of information on us, we need to be very, very careful about what we do and how we protect it.
القضية الأخرى قضية الأجهزة الإلكترونية مثل اللابتوب، الآيباد، التلفون يعني السمارت فون، فكلنا نحملها ونأتي بها من خارج ونأخذها معنا إلى خارج البلد. فأنت يعني كن حذر يعني في بعض الأحيان هم يأخذوا منك التلفون أو هذا إذا استطاعوا أنهم يوصلوا إلى المعلومات حقك في الفيسبوك في داخل كل المعاملات كل شيء يأخذوا عنك معلومات كثيرة قد تسبب لك يعني بعض المتاعب. فحاول أنه يعني تكون حذر. هي ستشرح أكثر يعني كيف تكون حذر إن شاء الله، بس نقطة مهمة جدا هذه نقطة الأجهزة الإلكترونية.
One thing that is very important to keep in mind is it doesn't matter who you are at the border, whether you're a citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or a visa holder. If Customs and Border Protection asks you for your cell phone, you have to physically hand them your cell phone. You cannot deny them your cell phone or any electronic device. You cannot withhold it, and you cannot argue about whether you're turning it over. But that does not mean that we have to give Customs and Border Protection access to our contents of our cell phone, and that's a big distinction. If you have a passcode on your cell phone, whether it is the alphabet, numbers, those little swipes that people do, whatever else you can use as an actual password that you've created, you never have to give your password to Customs and Border Protection unless you're a visa holder. So that goes for U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. If you have a password on your phone, you do not have to give them your password. If you're a visa holder and you refuse to give them your password, it's very likely they're going to put you on the next plane back from where you came from. But U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents do not have to turn over their password. And it's very important to understand the distinction between a password and having your phone locked, because people think that if you have your phone locked, but you have like a thumbprint on it, or you have like your face, I know iPhone will do your image and open your phone, that is not the same as a password. And CBP and other law enforcement agencies, once you're inside the United States, can force you to utilize your thumbprint and your face ID to open your phone. The only thing that protects your phone is if you have a unique password on it.
طيب هذه نقطة مهمة جدا. يعني إذا أنت في البوردر في المطار أو في كندا، جيت من كندا وطلبوا منك إنك يعني تعطيهم التلفون أو الكمبيوتر، أنت ملزم تعطيهم. يعني إذا قال لك يعني اعطني تلفونك، ما تقول no this is mine I cannot give you mine. no أنت ملزم إنك تعطيه. تمام. هذه قضية مهمة جدا. لكن القضية الأخرى أنت مش ملزم تعطيها الباسورد. صح، الباسورد معك تلفون في التلفون حقك باسورد، معك في الكمبيوتر باسورد، معك في الآيباد باسورد. فأنت هذه اسمها يعني حقوق المعلومات، لست ملزما أنك تعطيه الباسورد. فهو قد يأخذ التلفون بس ما يقدر يدخل التلفون، فأنت ملزم تعطيها التلفون أو الآيباد أو الكمبيوتر، لكنك لست يعني لا تعطيها الباسورد حتى يدخل لمعلوماتك. هذا إذا أنت جنسية أمريكية أو يعني جرين كارد. لكن إذا أنت زائر، إذا جيت زيارة تعطي، إذا ما أعطيتهاش بيرجعك في النكست فلايت، يعني بيرجعك إلى بلدك إذا أنت زائر. تمام. في نقطة مهمة جدا، التلفون في الثم، صح ولا؟ بعض الأحيان تدخله بالثم، صح؟ وفي بعضها بالفيس، صح؟ يعني بالوجه. يعني هذا أنت ملزم يعني إنك لو قال لك حط الثم حقك تحطها، لأني مش معلومات، ما يعتبروش معلومات. إذا قال لك يعني اعمل على الفيس حقك تعمله يعني. فبالتالي ينصح إنه إيش تعمل باسورد حروف وكلمات بحيث أو أرقام بحيث إنه ما يقدروش يدخلوا لمعلوماتك.
I want it to be very clear to you that you do not have to open your phone for them. You don't have to give them your password, and you do not have to open the phone so they have access to hand it to it if you hand it to them. And I want to be clear about that for one very specific reason. 2 weeks ago, we had a call from a man who was returning from Turkey who was handed a piece of paper by Customs and Border Protection that purportedly told him that CBP had the legal right to inspect his phone and that he was required by law to give them the password or open it. And I'm telling you, law enforcement will lie to you, and that is a case where they have lied to you. It is not legal. It is not a legal requirement for you to give them the password or open your phone. And they will also threaten you. They will say, we're going to keep your phone and we're going to have somebody hack into it. And they'll use the term hack. They don't mind. and we're going to send it to Washington and have somebody hack into it. But I'm telling you, it's better for you to let them confiscate your phone and try to get into it than it is to open it, because once you've opened it, that's consent to a search, and they're going to download all of the information off of your phone, and then there's nothing you can do about it. But if you tell them I'm not opening it, and they take it from you, and somehow they hack into it, there are legal things that we can do to get your electronics back and to have the information that they've downloaded on it destroyed if they don't have a warrant. The only way to protect your information is for you to refuse. And I know it's a pain to go without your phone. I do. We're all attached to it. But it is much better for you to have them take your phone than it is for you to give permission, because once you've given permission, you cannot take it back.
فيعني هم بالمطار بيحاولوا يعني قد يكذبوا عليك، يقولوا مثلا يعطوك ورقة، يقولوا هذه ورقة من القانون إنه هذا القانون يلزمك إنك تعطينا الباسورد. يكذبوا يعني يعملوا، يهددوك أيضا، يعملوا عليك تهديد. أنت قانونيا لست ملزما تعطيهم الباسورد، تمام؟ حتى لأنك إذا أعطيتهم الباسورد يدخلوا حقك، يشوفوا من معك، يشوفوا إيش كتب بالفيسبوك، إيش يعني من لا تشاهد، إيش كتبوا أصحابك، إيش كتبوا مدري إيش إلى آخره. فهم قد لهم الحق يأخذوا تلفونك ويأخذوا معهم، يعني يقول لك يعني روح إحنا بنرجع لك يعني. وقد ربما يقول لك احنا نقدر ندخل لداخله، عندنا ناس خبراء يقدروا يدخلوا لداخله ويأخذوا معلوماتك. هم قد يستطيعوا يعني يعملوا هاك، يعني يسموها بالانجليزي هاك، او يعني غزو للمعلومات داخله. لكنه الافضل انك ما تعطيهم معلوماتك، لانك لو اعطيتهم الباسورد معناها اعطيتهم الحق القانوني انهم يأخذوا معلومات كلها اذا اعطيتهم انت. لكن اذا هم من نفسهم دخلوا واخذوا المعلومات، لك بعدين حقوق اخرى انك تقاضيهم انه يعني دخلوا معلوماتك واخذوه الى اخره. فهي تنصح انه ايش، بغض النظر لا تعطي حقك المعلومات ولا الباسورد للسلطات في المطار.
And since we know what a pain it is to travel places without our cell phone and to be without it, and we know that we're more likely at the border to have our cell phone taken from us, there are some things that you should do in advance. The first thing is, if you have social media, if you have, for instance, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, those are all things that you can log out of, and we should absolutely be logging out of them. If you have photographs, especially if you're a husband and you have photographs of your wife or your daughter without her hijab on, we should be removing those photos to the cloud and signing out of the cloud. We should be removing all unnecessary information from our phone before we cross back over the border, including signing out of all of our email accounts and making sure that our password is not remembered on our phone for that time being. And if you can't do that, then by all means, you should try to travel with a phone that is not your everyday personal use phone, that it is a phone that you just use for travel and has just the necessary contacts that you need while you're traveling. That way, if they take it, you really haven't lost that much.
Yeah. So, يعني تنصح إنه يعني احتمال يتعبوك في قضية يأخذوا تلفونك. إذا عندك فيسبوك ولا يعني انستغرام، لاج اوت يعني اخرج من البرنامج، يعني بحيث انهم لا دخلوا ما يقدروش يدخلوا للبرنامج. إذا عندك صور مثلا لأسرتك لزوجتك يعني بدون حجاب، بدون يعني أي صور يعني خاصة فيك، حاول تبعدها أو تحطها بمكان ثاني أو تحطها في الإنترنت، يعني في حاجة في الإنترنت يعني عليها باسورد وكل شيء، بحيث إنه بعدين ترجعها على التلفون، اسمها الكلاود. وأفضل شيء ربما هي تقول إنه إذا تستطيع إنك تأخذ تلفون فقط خاص للسفر، يعني التلفون حقك اللي فيها المعلومات المهمة حطه في البيت، خذ تلفون يعني خاص للسفر ما فيش فيه أي معلومات، بحيث إنه لو أخذوه يعني مش مشكلة. هذه قد تكون أفضل طريقة.
And I have just a couple more points because I know it's Ramadan, everybody's fasting, so I'm sure this is a long day for everybody. But it's very important. I think it's also important to understand that when they take your cell phone, what they're looking for is your contacts. How many people in this group have WhatsApp? Probably all of us, right? How many people are in a WhatsApp group with more than 25 people? Or more than 50 people, or more than 150 people? How many people have ever been added to a WhatsApp group or a Signal group by somebody, and there's people in the group that you don't know? All of us probably. I know I personally am. And I think what they're looking for is to see how we're connected. And there have been people who've come to the border and they have been asked about somebody who had their name in their phone. So for instance, you show up at the border, my name is Amy, they said, Amy, we found your phone number in so-and-so's phone. How do you know this person? I don't know that person. My name happened to be in a group of a WhatsApp group with them. So this is why it's very important that we don't carry a phone with all of that type of information on it. And it's also the reason why it's very important that we don't answer questions for the FBI or the Customs and Border Protection. Because if we say we don't know, they think that we know because we're in a contact or we're in a Facebook group. Lying to law enforcement is a 7-year felony. And if you start answering questions about who this person is and who that person is and why you're in this group and why they have your number, and it doesn't comport with what they think that they already know, they're going to come back and they're going to ask you questions again and again and again and again. And because we've answered questions the first time, now we're having FBI visits to our home, to our workplace, to our school, and now we have a problem because what we say doesn't match maybe something we said the first time or something that they already believe that they know, and then we have a problem.
Yeah, so طبعا كلنا معنا يعني تلفون بالواتساب صح ولا لا؟ الواتساب في معك كونتاكتس، معك يعني أشخاص فيه، يعني قد تضيف إلى مجموعة فيها 100 واحد 200 واحد، فهم يشتوا الكونتاكتس هذا، يشتوا من الواتساب يشتوا الكونتاكتس، وبعدين بعد ما يأخذون منك الأشخاص اللي أنت معهم في الواتساب جروب اللي هم قد يكونوا بالمئات يسألوك أسئلة من هذا الشخص؟ يعني كيف تعرفه؟ منين تعرفه؟ إذا قلت أنا ما أعرفش يقول لك أنت لاير، يعني أنت تكذب، يعني يتخذوها ضدك، يعني بعدين يبدأوا تحقيق يعني آخر. فعلشان تحمي نفسك حاول إنه ما تعطيهمش الباسورد ولا الكونتاكت يعني حق المجموعة، وبعدين يعني يبدأوا بتحقيقات معك ويجوا لك للبيت ويجوا لك للمدرسة ويتعبوك يعني. فاحمي نفسك من البداية، احمي معلوماتك بحيث إنك ما تعطيهمش أي معلومات، ما تفتح لهمش أي مجال أو أي باب.
And this goes to my last point, and then we'll open it up for questions, inshallah. But it is a federal felony subject to 7 years in prison for lying to law enforcement. And the lie doesn't have to be a big lie. It doesn't have to be a lie that means anything. It's just a lie. Law enforcement can and will lie to you to coerce you into doing what they want, but you cannot lie to them. And it can be an innocent mistake, and they will come and say, well, you said this on this day, and you said this on that day, and now you've been charged with a felony. I say this every time I come here, but the first year I worked with CAIR, the first case I worked on for CAIR in federal court was of a Pakistani national who had been traveling overseas, and they put him on the do not fly list while he was overseas. We successfully sued to bring him back, and the day that we sued and won to bring him back, they issued a warrant for his arrest. And the crime that he committed was lying to the FBI about how many Facebook pages he had. They asked him, how many do you have? He said, I have one. They knew he had a second one, and in order to keep him in Pakistan and compel him not to come back to the US, they charged him with a federal felony. So when I tell you it does not have to be a big lie, it does not have to be a big lie. And likely in this case, it was a mistake. It was a mistake. He said, well, I used to have another account, but I don't use it anymore. So they didn't care about that explanation. They left him to fight that out in court to find out whether he was going to be convicted of a 7-year felony over Facebook pages.
قضية مهمة جدا إنه الكذب على المنظمات الفيدرالية مثل ال FBI وغيرها يعتبر جريمة. هم يحق لهم يكذبوا عليك حتى يأخذوا منك معلومات قانونيا. يحق لهم يكذبوا علينا ولا يحق لنا أننا نكذب عليهم. وجابت يعني هذا إذا تكذب على ال FBI وثبتوا عليك أنك تكذب 7 سنين بالسجن. جابت واحد كان عنده مشكلة إنه ما يقدرش يطلع في الطيران نو فلاي زون، وبعدين كير ساعدته وطلع في الطيران. وبعدين لما جاء سألوه أسئلة، كم معك فيسبوك؟ يعني كم معك حسابات بالفيسبوك؟ بعض الناس عندهم أكثر من حساب، صح ولا لا؟ عنده حساب باسم وحساب باسم، أو حساب قديم وحساب جديد. فقال لهم 1، هو عنده 2، فيعتبر هذا إيش؟ جريمة ضد يعني، أو يعني يعتبر إيش؟ شيء إنه خطأ ارتكبه ويحق لهم إنهم يحاكموه ويدخلوا السجن لمدة 7 سنين. فقضية التعامل مع ال FBI وإنه تكون حذر جدا في قضية إيش المعلومات التي تعطيهم ما تكونش متناقضة.
And because a mistake like that can be made very, very easily, because we're asking, sometimes they ask you a lot of questions, they ask the same question different ways, and we get confused, it's better to not say anything at all. And I just want to remind everybody that the FBI is still very, very active in this community, in the Southeast Michigan, and there are agents that I am so frequently in contact with that I have their phone number saved in my phone. When I call them, they greet me like we're friends, like, hey, Amy, how's it going? So it is still a very frequent thing that Muslims in this community are being contacted by the FBI. So it's better to remain silent. And just with regards to that, if you are contacted by the FBI, and you're not at the border, say you're in your home, your car, your place of work, on the street, everybody, regardless of whether you're a U.S. citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or any type of visa holder, or even if you're undocumented, you have the constitutional right to remain silent, and you have the constitutional right to have an attorney present before you answer any questions. The U.S. Constitution protects everybody who is found inside of the United States. So if you are on U.S. soil, you have constitutional protections to remain silent and have an attorney, and we should be using those regardless of what our status is, and we should be using them without fear of reprisal.
فمهم جدا انه يعني مع الاف بي اي وغيره من المنظمات الفدراليه يعني ما تعطيهمش معلومات لانهم يسالوك اسئله عده مرات يعني يعطوك يجيب لك مثلا هذه المره يسالوك اسئله يجوا لك بعد عده اشهر ويسالوك نفس الاسئله واذا وقع اختلاف يعتبر يعني كذب يعني عليهم فهم بيستخدموا ضدك وهي تقول ان الاف بي اي يعني ما زال نشط في الجاليه يعني في جاليتنا الاف بي اي نشطين ويشتغلوا يعني مكانهم يشتغلوا يعني معهم اتصالات تتلقى اتصالات منهم فلازم نكون حذرين انت كامريكي الدستور يعطيك الحق انك تكون يعني صامت يعني ما تجيب اي معلومات ف يعني افضل شيء انه ايش لا تعطيهم اي معلومات ولا تدخل معهم في حديث وتظلي صامت يعني حمايه لك للان وللمستقبل.
And it doesn't matter, and Brother Dawud just reminded me to remind everybody that it doesn't matter who is questioning you, whether it's questioning at the border, questioning by a police officer, or questioning by the FBI. It is never appropriate and never okay for them to ask you about your religious beliefs or practices. It is illegal and unconstitutional, no matter where you are, for them to ask you about your religious beliefs or your religious practices. And it is also illegal and unconstitutional for them to ask you about your political beliefs or your political affiliations. It doesn't matter how you feel about President Biden or how you used to feel about President Trump. It doesn't matter how you feel about the war in Ukraine or the sanctions in Iran. None of that is relevant, and you cannot be asked about it. And anytime you're asked about it, you should automatically refuse to answer.
فهي تقول بغض النظر سواء كان الاف بي اي او البوليس او يعني اي جهه حكوميه لا يحق لهم يسالوك عن يعني معتقدك الديني يعني ايش معتقد او مذهبك او من اي جماعه انت سواء يعني من الاخوان او الحوثي او لا يحق لهم ان يسالوك او انت مع حرب روسيا انت ضد روسيا انت مع يوكرين اتسترا او اي من جماعه يعني انت او اي هذه الامور كلها معتقدك الدينيه لا يعني أنت يحق لك أنك ترفض الإجابة على هذه الأسئلة أي شيء عن معتقدك الديني أو ما تعتقده أو ما إيش رأيك في بايدن أو إيش رأيك في ترامب أو إيش رأيك في هذه الأمور كلها لست ملزما تجيب عليهم سواء كان بوليس شرطة رجال الشرطة سواء كان الاف بي اي سواء كان في البوردر في الحدود أو أي مكان.
And I think with that we'll open it up for questions, inshallah.
Questions? Okay. Yes. Yeah, so if this brother, he's asking if he has like a simple phone, he doesn't have any social account like Facebook, etc. He only has his phone with contacts people. If he gives them the phone and they get access into those contacts, do they have the right to ask him about all the contacts in that phone?
Anytime you volunteer information to any law enforcement agency, it opens you up for follow-up questions. So if you provide them with access to your phone and they see your contacts and they want to ask you about it, there's nothing stopping them from asking you about those people. And likewise, what happens sometimes, what we see, is they might not ask you about those people, but those people, when they travel across the border, might be asked about you and why their contact ended up in your phone.
Yeah, so إذا أنت يعني أعطيتهم التلفون وديت لهم الباسورد حقك وخليتهم يشوفوا الكونتاكتس، يحق لهم بعدين يسألوك عن الأشخاص دول، يحق لهم ما دام أنت بنفسك يعني تطوعيا جبت لهم المعلومات وجبت لهم هذا، فما عاد فيش يعني ما فيش حاجة تمنعهم إنهم يسألوك الأسئلة هذه كلها إذا أنت تطوعيا. أنت قصدك إذا قدروا يدخلوا بدون باسورد ولا كيف ولا؟ يا إذا أعطيتهم الباسورد يقدروا يدخلوا للأسماء ويسألوك بعدين من هذا ومن هذا.
عندما يكتشفون إنه معي مثلا نقول 50 60 شخص أسامي تلفون بس التلفون مش واتساب ولا تويتر ولا فيسبوك.
رايت يا.
وحصلوا هذا الشيء لازم يعني تدي لهم معلومات عن الناس هذول وهو بس إلا أرقام تلفونات.
إذا أنت أعطيتهم التلفون وأعطيتهم الباسورد يدخلوا يا إذا يا. Yeah. If he doesn't have a password and they get access to it through,
It's the same thing, because you have to hand your phone over at the border. So if you don't have a password on your phone, they'll have access to it, and then that may lead to follow-up questions. It's best to put a password on your phone, even if you just put it on for the time period that you're traveling.
So هي تنصح إنه يكون معك باسورد للتلفون بحيث ما يقدروش يدخلوا، ما أنتش ملزم تدلهم الباسورد. إذا معك باسورد ما يقدروش يدخلوا، ما يقدروش يسألوك، هذه أفضل طريقة. لكن إذا أديت لهم الباسورد أو ما مش معك باسورد يحق لهم بعدين يسألوك عن من هذا ومن هذا.
يعني ولو كررت السؤال في هذا الأشياء. مثلا ما عندي هذه الأشياء كلها ولا جبت لهم باسبور، أنا عارف إنهم بياخذوا التلفون بيفتحوه، عارفين إيش داخله وعارفين إيش هذا شيء.
هذا فتحوا
بعدين بيجوا يسألوك هذا مهدي كيف تعرفه ومن هو وش هذا فلان بس ما بالله معك أرقام تلفونات فقط.
So if he has a password and everything is protected, but they take it, they open it later, hack it into it. Do they have the right then to come to him and ask him like about me, about others?
They may do that, but if they take your phone at the airport and you know that they're trying to access it, I would advise everybody in this room to call CAIR Michigan, because we will work very hard to get your electronic device returned back to you and have the information that's taken off of it destroyed. It's something that we do on a regular basis.
إذا أخذوا مثلا وفتحوه اتصل لكير، تمام، وهم بيحاولوا يساعدوك إنه ما يستخدموش المعلومات اللي فيها ضدك. السؤال الثاني أتفضل.
No, I work for CAIR only. I'm the CAIR staff attorney.
أيوه.
كيف تحمى نفسك من هذه الأشياء؟
اشتريت ايباد مني من مطار جبتها معي وصلتها واشنطن، اخذوها مني ورجعوها.
ايش اشتريت عفوا؟ لانه هذا خبطنا هذا.
ايباد مني اشتريتها ب 150
ايباد اوكي. من الاردن اوكي.
وصلتها مطار واشنطن، قالوا ليش تفتحها في الطائره ما هي رصيد، واخذوها ورجعوها قدامي وقالوا منها لا تجرب.
ايباد ماني؟
Mini.
او ميني اسمه اوكي صغير اوكي اها اوكي وبعدين اخذوها؟ Oh, so what he's saying is like he came from Yemen. He came from Yemen, صح? And you bought iPad Mini in Jordan, $150 from the airport. And when he arrives at Washington, they took it from you and they said you should not open it, and they took it and they threw it in the garbage.
They didn't give you a receipt. Who it cost?
From where I bought it, what they said, I can't open it in the airplane. I have to be close to when I get to the airport.
Inshallah, call our office. You can find our number on the website, or it doesn't matter. Let's look into it and see what happened. You can call our office and we'll look into it and see what happened. Because $150 for an iPad at the airport's not a little bit of money. So give us a call and we'll see what we can find out for you, inshallah. Yeah, call us. Our number, you can find us at www.CAIR-MI or you can call us at 248-559-2247. That's our office number. We don't have a fax machine, but we can work out a way to get it, inshallah.
Is it?
Actually, everyone right now should get their phone and put our office number in your phone right now. 248.
هذا رقمهم يعني تاخذوه إذا تحتاجوا مساعدة في المستقبل. كير سموها كير CAIR.
Yeah, 559-2247. 2247.
Just do an intake.
Yeah. We have a case manager that will call you back and do a formal intake before you would talk to Sister Amy. 248-559-2247.
Okay.
No, you're all right.
Stop this harassment to the people. Should communities work together with the Senate or with the governor or to stop this harassing the people. All focusing on this. But that was
It is a problem, and there are initiatives through the federal government. So this is a federal government issue, so you have to go to your federal legislature, your congressmen, men and women, and your senators. There is legislation or laws that are trying to be passed to either change or stop the no-fly list and the selectee list and the watch list, which many of us are on. And so we should be encouraging our representatives to vote for that. That's what we should be doing, and that is the best way to stop this, is for there to be laws in place. The other thing that we do is we bring lawsuits. CAIR has brought many lawsuits to get people off of the watch list and the no-fly list, and they've had the no-fly list and the watch list declared unconstitutional a couple of years ago. That was overturned on appeal, and now we're waiting for Supreme Court to make that decision. So yes, you should be contacting people.
Also have a comment. Yeah.
There are many cases.
Yeah. Let me also add on that there's been a number of organizations that have been working on these issues for many years inside of the Muslim community and outside of the Muslim community. And we try our best to do lawsuits, but fundamentally this is a political problem. And even when we look at certain programs like the Countering Violent Extremism program or other initiatives that have labeled certain Muslim organizations, actually the American government also collaborates with other governments in regards to how they deal with the Muslim community. The CVE program, they borrowed that from the UK. The designation and how they treat certain Muslim organizations, the American government learned these tactics from the Egyptian government and from the Emirati government, from UAE, right? So it's not just something as simple just filing a lawsuit is the point I'm making. It's a very complex political issue in which Muslims, some bad Muslim countries are actually assisting the American government and I mentioned Egypt and Emirat for a reason, because you already understand, right?
Yeah.
Oh, let him translate.
اوكي سو قضيه هذه يعني منع اخ عارف، قضيه منع انه يعملوا هذا هي قضيه ماشيه، وفي منظمات اللي يحاولوا، بس اني قضيه سياسيه وحتى في دول اخرى تتدخل فيها، مش سهله يعني. لكن في منظمات بيحاولوا انهم يمنعوا الاف بي اي من يمنعوا، بس بالاخير يقول لك هذه الامن القومي ولازم نعمل التحقيقات هذه الى اخره. تفضل.
We have a problem. We all have families still in Yemen, even when we have family here. We have a problem to send money back there. Who's control the money sender? When we send money there, even if you send sometime 1,000, they hold your money.
I would encourage everybody. CAIR announced, how many months ago? 4 or 5 months ago, I think. We announced a brand new initiative where we're trying to deal with the issue of banking while Muslim. We know that there are problems involving banking while Muslim. We have our accounts seized over here. We are not able to wire money overseas. We have real issues, and we are working proactively at trying to resolve these issues. So if you have a banking issue, whether they have closed your account here, whether they are not allowing you to send money through Western Union or MoneyGram or RIA or however you're trying to send money, I encourage you to call our office, do an intake, and we will talk to you about the steps that we're taking to try to fix this issue for Muslims. It is something that I would encourage you all to subscribe to our e-blast newsletter, because this is something that we announced several months ago that we are doing. It's something brand new that we're taking on. And we're looking proactively at legislation to try to stop that as well.
بعض الأخ سأل إنه يعني بعض الأحيان يقفلوا عليك الحساب في البنك أو يمنعوك إنك ترسل فلوس لليمن مثلا أو دولة أخرى. يعني هذه قضية بيعملوها على كثير من الناس وكير يشتغلوا عليها. فإذا عندك أي مشكلة تواصل معهم، هم بيأخذوا معلوماتك وبيضيفوا القضايا التي هي يعني بيعملوها إن شاء الله. الأستاذ.
بالنسبة أنت مروح زيارة، مروح مع عائلتك مثلا كشف، ليش معك 3000 10,000 كل فترة بعملهم يخلصوا مدة الفلوس حجم. كبداية بقت 10,000 بعدين طيحوها كم، بعدين هلا بسمع ل 3,000. على سبيل المثال شو حقوقك أنت؟ بتقدر مثلا تسوي ورقة تقدم قبل إنه أنا مثلا أنا وعائلتي بتشكلوش 10,000 لما نقعد 3 أشهر أو 4 أشهر أو حسب المسافة. في إنه الله نقدر نظبطها قبل على أساس ما يوقفوكش، لأن مرات بعد ما بتتفتش وأنت داخل على الطيارة في الممر هذا بوقفوك وبياخذوا الفلوس اللي بصادوك.
الليمت 3,000 ولا 10,000 الآن؟
هي كانت أقل من 10 هلا 3,000.
Okay. So, okay. طيب the brother is asking about how much money you can take with you overseas. So he's saying it used to be 10,000, now it's 3,000. I don't know what country I don't know what, but he's saying what can they do to carry more?
Okay, this is a very common problem in our community, and there's a very big misunderstanding amongst our community about how much money you can actually carry. So you can carry less than 10,000, so 10,000 or less US dollars with you overseas. But that means that everybody you're traveling with can only have a total of $10,000. So if you and your wife are traveling overseas, for instance, she can have 5,000, you can have 5,000, but you can't have more than 10,000 together, like the total amount that you're carrying together. If you're traveling with 10 people, the total amount that all 10 people can have together is $10,000. It is not $10,000 per person. This is a problem that we have. We are actually working right now getting people's money back actively at CAIR for people who thought that they could bring $10,000 for their wife and $10,000 for the husband, and they had $20,000. And you can't do that. They'll take your money. They will take your money if you're leaving. They will take your money if you're coming. You can't even leave the U.S. with that kind of money. So it's $10,000 total for everybody in your group, what they have together. There are forms, if you know that you have a specific need, for instance, to take or bring back more money than that, there is a form that you can fill out, but you have to provide proof that it is lawfully yours. And if you cannot provide proof that it's lawfully yours, you will get it seized. And lawful proof means you have a bank account that you withdrew the money from. You have a job that supports the amount of money. If you're taking $20,000 overseas, you can't come back and show your tax records where you're only making $20,000 a year. Like, they're going to take your money. Like, that's a real case that just happened. Somebody contacted me 2 weeks ago about that. They said they won't give me my money back. I said, well, you made $20,000. That means you didn't spend any money. You took it all overseas. That's not likely. So there are ways to do it. There's a form for it, but you have to fill out the form and you have to declare it before they ask you about it. You have to affirmatively tell people that you're carrying that much money and present the form.
So يعني أعتقد قد فهمت منها قضيتين. القضية الأولى إنه إذا أنت مسافر تقدر تأخذ 10 أو أقل أنت وعائلتك. يعني إذا معك مثلا أنت وعائلتك 5 ما تقولش 50,000 يعني كل واحد 10 كلكم إيش 10 طيب إذا تشي تأخذ أكثر من 10 يعني مثلا أنت تحتاج في البلاد تصرف يعني لازم تعبي فورم لازم تعبي استمارة تقول أنا بأخذ هذا الفلوس وتدي إثبات أنك أخذتها من البنك يعني من حسابك يعني أنت شغال من عرق جبينك يعني ما أخذتش من كاش أو بعت مخدرات أو يعني هذا يعني يشتري يتأكدوا إنه الفلوس هذه إيش فممكن تأخذ كم ما تشتري يعني أهم شيء إن تكون معك إثبات إني جاي من طرق يعني شرعية ومن البنك. هم بيعطوك في المطار صح؟ They give you in the airport the form?
No, you have to fill it out before you go to the airport.
From where do you get the tickets? Right? Airline tickets, airlines, you know.
You can get it from the airline ticket. You can Google it online. I don't have I have the name of the form. I don't have it on me, but you can literally Google the form. You can find it. Yeah.
Yeah, Google. روح to Google. Yeah.
It's a federal document.
Yes, brother. Okay. So he's asking, like, let's say me and my daughter are traveling. My daughter already has different address.
If you booked your tickets together and you're traveling on the same, you cannot. The two of you guys can have $10,000 together. Yeah. It depends on who you're traveling with.
خليهم يسافروا بطائرة ثانية وأنت بطائرة ثانية. Yes, brother. Yes, هو قد جاوبنا على السؤال. He's asking if can they take the phone physically? Yes.
Yes, you have to physically hand it to them. Yes and no. So that's a very hard question to answer. Technically, legally, if they want to take your phone, they have to have reasonable suspicion that there's evidence of a crime on your phone. But they do confiscate people's phones at the airport, and then it's up to you whether you fight to get it back. Because technically, if they take your phone, they're supposed to have a warrant to open it. We know they're not getting warrants to open people's phones. But because they'll hold it for 3 weeks and then you'll get it back, and then maybe it works right and maybe it doesn't. But if you get your phone seized and they take your phone, we can make them destroy the evidence, or like not the evidence, but like the documents, whatever data, I guess, that they got off of it. There are ways to force them to destroy it if they did not have probable cause and a warrant to open it.
So they got the right to take it, and they go with them for so much, and send it back to you. How do you know that they will send it back?
What I'm telling you is that they're going to take your phone if they want your phone. Legally, they're not supposed to open it without a warrant once they've taken it from you. You will not know whether they've done it or not unless you contact an attorney who can fight to get your phone back and for them to disclose whether or not they've taken anything off of your phone, and if they have, fight for them to then destroy the data that they've taken off of your phone illegally. That's the only way to do it, unfortunately. Maybe not. That's a very specific question, and it's very fact-driven.
Yeah, so يعني إذا أخذ التلفون كيف تعرف إنهم فتحوا وأخذوا معلوماتك؟ عن طريق محامي لازم يتصل لهم ويقول لهم هل أخذتمهم؟ وإذا أخذوه يعني تقدر يطلب منهم إنهم يعني destroy يعني يمسحوا المعلومات إلى آخره. To sue them هذه يعتمد على القضية يعني كل قضية بقضيتها يعني حسب إذا أنت هل كان معك أنت معلومات خطيرة أخذوها منها لكن إذا أنت يعني بريء ما عندك شيء فتعتمد على كل قضية بقضية. طيب it's been more than an hour. Okay.
I think this brother had this brother had.
واحد مسافر يشتري يرسل معاه لازم مسافر فلوس لازم يحب استمارة يعني يستدعي حسابه كذا
Okay. So let's say brother Dawud is traveling to Yemen and I want to send money with him. So can I send money with him and I fill in paper, you know, I'm sending like 10,000 or whatever, 5,000 with brother Dawud to Yemen?
Legally, no. Legally, no. You cannot travel overseas with money from other people. You have to, and if you're currying money, there's like legal requirements for people who courier money.
يا ما يحق لك انك ترسل مع واحد ثاني.
And then I think this brother had a question. He's had his hand up for some time.
So when they pull you aside, can you video that or you can't?
At the border, so that's a very technical question. At the border, you don't have the right to film. You do not have the right to film at the border. If it's other law enforcement agencies like the police and things like that, it's different. But at the border, like I said at the beginning, you have very diminished rights at the border, and the right to film at the border is not one of those things that you can do. No.
سؤال اخي يسال اذا انت في البوردر في المطار يعني تقدر تصورهم هم ممنوع يعني، لكن داخل المدينه يعني مع في بيتك تقدر تصور. اوكي the last question اخر سؤال ان شاء الله يلا.
بالنسبة للورقة هذه اللي يعملها واحد علشان الفلوس يعطيها لهم هو قبل ما يسأله.
Where do they give this paper? When you fill like for more than 10,000, you fill it and then you give it to them at the airport or where?
You do. So what you would do, if you have this paper, you should tell, when you check in, you should not do electronic check-in. Most of us can't do that anyways, but we should not be doing electronic check-in. We should tell the person behind the counter. So if you're traveling Delta, you would tell the Delta agent, listen, I'm carrying such and such amount of money and I have my form. I need to notify people that I have my form, and then they will direct you to the right people to give that form to. And if you don't do that, even if you have the form, they'll take your money. So it's very important you disclose it as early as possible when you get to the airport.
So لما تروح بالكاونتر ياخذوا منك الجواز تقول لهم يعني تقول لهم انا يعني معي اكثر من 10,000 تعطيهم يعني، اذا ما اعطيتهم شو لا تروح واكتشفوا انه معك كثير ياخذوا عليك الفلوس. طيب. يا شكرا شكرا لكم. Thank you so much for يا في انا برويك يا حق المسجد ان شاء الله. Yeah, there is a link AMS Youth AMS YouTube إن شاء الله. مسجد ديربون يوتيوب. جزاكم الله خير جزاكم الله خير سيستر إيمي برادر داود، بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
إن شاء الله. No problem.